items on our consent agenda.
Yeah, I don't have any real commentary above and beyond that relative to your consent agenda. And again, we can talk about removing any particular one of these items to an action agenda if you prefer it not be on consent next Tuesday. But you've got the budget amendments that are in your packet, which include the transfer of the Knoll Road funds that we talked about just last week of $181,675, and that's to just simply be able to provide our match on that NCDOT contract. And then a capital project fund amendment for that same project in that same amount. So those are the first two items. And then you've also got a transfer from the general fund for the brush truck that we have been awaiting construction on for some time. We had every reason to believe, and we're told we would be taking receipt of that by June the 30th. That did not occur, but it is actually in now. It's sitting in Texas and awaiting on somebody to pick it up. So, but obviously it's post June 30th, so this is a transfer from the carryover fund balance that was created by the fact that we didn't pay for it on June 30th. So it doesn't change your available fund balance relative to the budget you adopted, but we do need to move the money forward to the current fiscal year. There will be one additional amendment that Tess, I know, was working on even 15 minutes ago when I drove down here. You'll recall some conversation around the subscription-based information technology arrangements, or SBETAs, that were caused by GASB 96. So there are a series of those that we will also attach as a budget amendment. She's just trying to work through those lease agreements and get sign-off from the auditors, et cetera, to be compliant with the GASB 96. The second item is the approval of the water shortage response plan. This is an adoption that we ask council to do annually based upon a general statute requirement. The plan itself has not changed. James has sent that forward. The state has approved that particular plan every year since 2016. And it's just simply the required adoption of same for the fiscal year. Resolution 1065 is for the NCDO changes to the traffic pattern on Broad Street. You'll recall that we discussed that at the most recent meeting. This is for the one-waying of Broad Street down to Illinois, and then the town can turn around and do the same thing on the opposite side of the tracks where we have jurisdiction as opposed to NCDOT. The next item on there is a request for DOT to lower the speed limit on Broad Street. We are attempting to get their most up-to-date form for that request. That is actually something DOT utilizes, or at least in the past, a standard form for. When James went to the website to download what he hoped to be the form, it had a rather old date on it. It could be that they have not changed the form since, I think it was a 2015 date, but he's trying to get verification on that from DOT so that we don't adopt and send them the wrong form for that. And again, that's just simply to lower the speed on Southwest Broad Street once the one-way traffic begins so that it will match with the rest of the core district of downtown. I'm sort of flying through these. Please stop me if you have a particular question relative to these. Resolution 1067 simply sets the date for a public hearing of the annexation application out there on Cliff Court. So that date will be set then ultimately for your business meeting on September the 12th. Meeting minutes under item F. If you had a chance to review those, if there are any changes to be made prior to adoption, just let Beth know what those need to be. And then finally, item G, we did get the plat. BJ and his staff got the plat up to Moore County, so we're getting the parcel numbers and everything, and we will have that resolution ready to go for the packet at the end of the week. What that resolution does, and you may recall you looked at it when we were talking about the tract of land that is Armory Park, it doesn't actually make for the transaction. It provides authority for the mayor to ultimately sign any documents that does that. We will then turn around, following adoption. Beth will advertise it by law for a minimum of 10 days. It will ultimately be for more than 10 days or more than 10 days in advance, because the intent would be then to turn around and not take any action until after your September 12th meeting at the earliest. And once you adopt this resolution, that could happen in September. If there's some small detail or something you wish to further work out with the Y, it could be in October, it could be in November, but this basically begins that process and allows Beth to go ahead and make advertisement about the intent to potentially convey the property. That is your consent agenda as proposed for next Tuesday. Any questions on that before I move to the next section?
One clarifying thing, the water shortage plan, that's every 5 years.
Oh, it's every,
Local water supply,
okay, I was going to say, I remember just doing that recently, but it's the local water supply versus shortage. Thank you for that, James. Yes. So we do the local water supply around, that usually is
I think that's usually
October. I was going to say, it's not too far off, so.
So James is working without the benefit of a microphone, and if we can just put in the record what he just said.
Yes,
that would
just
be
to
great.
repeat that for the record in the microphone. James did correct me that the water shortage response plan is an every 5-year adoption. It's the local water supply plan that is an annual adoption.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Then we've got public hearings. We've got 4 of those.
Yep. Your first one, Beth has already prepared an ad and letting the public know that you'll hold a public hearing just to hear any feedback relative to the solid waste collection options, most of which revolve around how to handle recycling, if handling it at all. In addition to the ad that will run in the pilot, there was a rather lengthy pilot article about the decisions that council will be bringing forward, and we've been posting some stuff to the website and just trying to get the word out that, again, those changes, whatever or wherever council lands on those, would not take place till January of 2025. So we're trying not to create too much confusion in the midst of the changes that just occurred on July 1. But it is a contract we need to get in place well in advance, particularly if it's with a different company that needs to order up trucks and the like.
Reagan, even though
Yes, sir.
these say public hearings and the next line items, for action items, you're expecting us to pick that and a lot of these, even though it's a public hearing, you want us to make decisions on these on the 8th, correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct. Which would be typical of your public hearings, that you have the ability to vote on them after the close of that hearing, so. Again, AXO 323 is the annexation of what is better known as the Knollwood Tract. That's the Kelly Miller land, and that is inclusive of both the apartment complex that came through as part of a PDP some time ago, in addition to the remainder of the land. So this will actually bring everything in that wasn't already annexed. And the map that BJ's got on the screen there is pretty good representation of what it is we're talking about.
Okay.
And then item C and D, I'm going to turn over to BJ for any conversation or updates.
Thank you, Reagan. The text amendment OA 0223 is an amendment that has been submitted by Sheetz Gas Station. The current standard for lighting under a service station canopy is 3-foot candles, and that is pretty darn low. So they came in, and while they were going through the process of site plan review, they said, hey, your standard is really low. We'd like to be quite a bit higher. And so the only way to do that was for them to propose a text amendment to the UDO that affects the entire community, because their project is a by right use. It's not a plan development. It's not a conditional zoning district. They can't adopt their own unique zoning. So we met with them, and they came in with a proposal for 12-foot candles, or lumens per square foot, which are those two terms are interchangeable. And then it went to the planning board, and it came out of the planning board. They did give a presentation, and it came out of the planning board with a recommendation from the planning board for 25. And however, there was some additional information that was not provided at the planning board. So staff has a recommendation after going back to the LEI standards, which is the Illumination Engineering Institute. The standard in there for canopies in intermittently lit corridors like our US 1 corridor is 15. And so we're recommending 15 rather than 20 or 25, and you will hear from Sheets about their proposal about why the standard should be higher.
Okay, but this says 3 to 12, but the 12 is a 15 now?
Yeah, their application is for 12. And then when they went to planning board, they pitched 20 to 25.
Okay.
And the planning board recommended 25. And then we looked at their source of information. We bought a copy of the standards that they referenced. The standards they referenced as being appropriate for 20 were actually for urban areas like Charlotte, where everything is, there's a lot of backlighting everywhere. So when you're under a canopy fueling, when you look out, there's a lot of street lights and there's a lot of lighting that affects everything. Well, the same book actually has a standard for intermittently lit corridors like our US 1, where it's like business, dark, 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 business, dark, 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 dark. And in those situations, the standard is 15, and in rural environments, the standard is 10. And with the 12 actually came from a conversation we had with them where we had advocated for 10, they advocated for 15, and we settled on 12. Then that became 25 at the planning board meeting, so.
So your recommendation, though, just went from 12 to 15. Why?
Because the LEI standards that they reference, we downloaded a copy, we read them in their entirety.
Right.
And the LEI standards for safety are for a corridor almost exactly like our US 1. The LEI standard that has been studied, much like AASHTO standards or, is 15.
But this would not relate just to US 1. This would be every place in town.
That's correct. Because this is a text amendment to the entire UDO, this applies to
Yeah.
everywhere. In fact, we do have some gas stations right now that are lit less than 20 or 25, and they're fully functional. I've visited them, I've taken readings, and this would allow them to bump it up to 20 or 25 if you went with the planning board's recommendation.
Yikes.
So
Okay, great. I think I get it.
Mandatory for the others to go up to,
no, sir, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. It's a minimum standard.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
okay.
Excuse me.
It's a maximum standard, yeah.
Sorry,
Okay, right, okay.
It's a maximum of
The M word.
Right.
in fairness, I will say that the 3, when we saw 3 in there, 2 is the standard at property lines when all the lighting from the site is supposed to be cut down to pretty dark. If you're under a canopy and it's 3 at average illumination, you can see, but I wouldn't want to try to pump gas or something like that.
You had safety concerns at 3, correct?
Yeah, definitely. If you follow the LEI standards without a planning director position offering too much, opinion on this, if you follow LEI standards for the type of corridor like for a commercial corridor like we have in our jurisdiction, yeah, 15 is appropriate. Now we have other gas stations in other areas that are probably more rural than a commercial corridor, and in fact, originally that's where we came up with the 10 because we thought a standard that applied to the entire jurisdiction may be better off at 10. They thought it'd be better off at 15, and that's why we settled on 12. But then they applied for 12 and pitched 20 or 25 at the planning board meeting.
And have you had occasion to witness 10 on in-town? Are there any 10s that you've been able to see?
There aren't any 10 gas stations except for some of the gas stations when they close at night, what they do is they actually cut off half their lights under the canopy to
Okay.
just sort of dim it but not turn it off completely. And you'll usually find that kind of lighting. But actually the Toyota dealership car lot is at about 8 or 9. And so ranging up to 12, the front of that. So if you want to know what that looks like, about 10 is that Toyota dealership, the front lot there. The 8 is fairly dim for pumping gas.
Okay.
The
In codes and stuff. You
the
don't-
Circle K on the corner of Murray Hill and 15501 is about 16. So if you want to know what 15, 16 ballpark looks like, that Circle K is 16.
What's the convenient mart in West Southern Pines?
or the BP.
I do not know. I haven't tested that one.
I'd be interested in that. What's the convenient mart downtown and on Broad Street?
Directly under the canopy is actually over 30 when you're directly under the canopy.
And so is that a violation of the current UDO code?
Technically, it would be a violation right now, yep, because the current standard is 3.
Clarification, when you talk about the Toyota being 8 or 10, you're talking about if you are on the site or at the curb. So in other words, driving by on 15501 without entering the site, you're not visually looking at an 8 or 10 impact.
It's correct. So foot candles and lumens per square foot are the measurement of light as it impacts a surface. It's not a measurement of the flow of light. That's a different measurement. The measurement of light when it hits a surface, the parking lot on the front of the Toyota dealership, when you take the meter and put it on the parking lot, that's 8.
I understood, but I just want to make sure
Appreciate that
everybody was on the
clarification.
same page.
The reasoning behind the planning board going so much higher?
My understanding of what occurred at the planning board is Sheets had an illumination expert come and give about an hour of testimony to the planning board, and gave a lot of testimony about safety and about how more lighting is safer, more lighting is safer. And I can't necessarily, this individual presented credentials as having substantial expertise. So I don't wish to go toe-to-toe on that expertise, but I do wish to share right now, prior to this, that all that being the case, this is a legislative decision, and it's our town, and it's our brand. So brighter lights that may serve pumping gas are our choice about whether we want to have that or not.
Right.
When the illumination expert presented testimony to the planning board was, my understanding, I wasn't there, but it was relayed to me by Elena, who was at the meeting. The planning board was convinced that dimmer lighting would create safety issues, and therefore, and then there was actually some confusion because it turns out they recommended 25, but later when Elena followed up with members of the planning board, they thought they had been voting for 20. But the reason the 20, I will say this, the illumination expert at that meeting did not provide the context that I just gave you about the LEI. He kept saying the LEI standard was 20. The LEI standard was 20. He did not say that the LEI standard is 20 for urban environments, 15 for intermittent environments, and 10 for rural environments. He didn't present those 3 different categories. He merely said the LEI standard is 20, the LEI standard is 20. So the planning board said, well, if the LEI standard is 20 for canopies, I guess we should go with 20.
Great. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Did the expert cover the issues of, the probability of marketing, given the brightness of illumination, dealing with all of the safety things, but actually possibly, dealing with issues of marketing?
It was relayed to me that the expert presented himself as merely here to help the town of Southern Pines, but he did not say if who he was, why he was there, or who he was, if he was on the clock, you might say. So
But not on our clock.
in terms of, it is true, it is my understanding, and I have encountered this professionally in the past, is that gas stations prefer to be as brightly lit as possible because for the passing motorist seeking to buy gas, as bright a lighting as possible is appealing. It's just for everybody else who isn't pulling in there, it's squinting.
And you could land a plane.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
LEI standards, thank you. Next one, Megan?
Yeah, the next one was me as well. Actually, it's a text amendment as requested by the town council to remove the letter Z from the GB district column for commercial mini or self-storage, effectively removing it as a by right land use in that district.
Good,
That one's pretty self-explanatory, I don't think, unless you have any questions.
no. Thanks for moving right along. That was a quick turnaround on that one. Thank you. Now we're at reviewing the proposed action items for August the 8th.
Yes, 5A simply represents your decision point on the plan development application at the corner of New York and Bennett. As I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, BJ, but I think this is why we put it on action items. The hearing has been closed.
Yes, sir.
It's simply during a period now of council
Gathering
ultimately
information.
rendering a decision on that.
Correct.
And then, BJ, you want to tackle 5B?
Yes, sir. If I can go back to 5A just very briefly.
Sure.
The applicant did submit a little bit of additional information. The applicant heard the concern from the council about section UDO 4.10.8 regarding multifamily residential design. Therefore, the applicant did submit a much more detailed review of every single section of 4.10.8 and a response or comment to whether or not his project could meet that or not. That's in the packet. And there's an email from the applicant explaining some other things that he heard from the council that evening. And so those two things have been added to the packet if you're interested, just in response to discussion that occurred at the last meeting. So, and then for the watershed protection permit, this is a watershed protection permit that we, I have to admit, tried every way we could to find a way that it was not going to be required. This piece of property is, it's right across from the back entrance to, I'm trying to remember the name of the development that Pete Mace did over there, across from the back entrance to Rec Room. What's the name of that little area back there? I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Yes, there's a lot in Bradford Square. Yeah,
Memorial ball fields and all of that. There's like
Yep.
homes that have been moved in there as office buildings and things.
yep. And that development back there got a 1.2 acre exemption allocation many years ago, but the development is greater than 1.2 acres, and they are now at a point where they have recombined to create a parcel that is outside of the 1.2 acres that was previously granted. And man, we tried every way we could to find out a compliant way that that exemption allocation could be redirected, and we were not able to find it. And therefore, we are bringing forward a watershed protection permit request to grant 0.12 of an acre of exemption allocation for a portion of that lot.
I don't ever recall seeing this one single-family home ask for it. I mean, has that come up before?
Well, for detached single-family residential, there are a variety of exemptions built into the watershed protection permit, the watershed protection overlay. But this isn't residential. This is a commercial building.
Oh, I thought it said single-family residence. But it's going to be commercial? It says residence in the description.
Says single-family
Family
residence
residence.
with attached garage.
Another single-family residence, he's moving in there for purposes of commercial use.
That may be the case,
Like
yeah, yeah.
But like I said, it's a lot of cottages and things that are back there now, but they're all small businesses and offices and.
Bill, I appreciate bringing that up, though. I'll double-check that and be ready for that at the meeting.
Thought you had a new one that we'd never seen before.
So does it make sense to make BA and AB as far as just consider, yeah, flip those?
Yeah, let's do that.
Makes
If they
sense.
bring somebody, I don't know if they will, but
So,
yeah, so they're not sitting around for the other.
Yeah.
This could be a little-
so,
I think that would be a considerate
so
way to approach it.
WP 0223 is A and PD 0223 is B. Got it?
While we're on sort of that topic, I know I mentioned we could remove things from the consent agenda and put them under action items. Do you wish to move the YMCA agreement since it's not in the packet? Because we've been trying to get that finalized to an action item as opposed to consent, just in case there are questions that you have when Tuesday night rolls around.
I think that would be a healthy decision. I think it's a great decision, yeah.
What's going on?
Like to have that slid in above or below your conceptual development plan discussion?
Let's have it be B.
Okay.
Great,
So Webster's C.
I agree.
Webster's C,
B.
YMCA is B.
Right,
Okay?
that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that would, people need to know what's going on because they're probably rumors starting to spin. All righty. There we go. Thank you. I'm looking for a motion.
Make a motion.
I have a quick question before there's a motion to adjourn. I'm wondering, and this is a rookie question, I'm wondering if it's legitimate, or if there would be a lack of notice, if we went ahead and voted tonight on OAO 323. In other words, if we went ahead and approved that change to the UDO this evening. I don't know whether that's, maybe that's a question for the attorney.
Yeah.
Okay, then
public
that's what
hearing.
I thought was probably the case, but I wanted to see if there was a way to do that. I certainly would support that. Okay, great. Thank you.
So now I'm looking,
Now motion to adjourn.
Second.
pleasure of the council.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back.
Tell me about this. Yeah, talk to me.